Broken Bells. Hey guys, how are you?
Good.
Doing well.
All right, thanks for coming in. I appreciate this.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So, the mythology being that both of you took different versions of a break and had lots of profound questions to ask yourselves. It just happened at the same time.
Something
I
like
guess
that.
so. Yeah.
Yeah. We knew, I was always a big fan of James's, and we knew each other for years, but more acquaintance-wise. And, we just decided to go in the studio for a week to see what would happen, and we just haven't looked back, really.
But then was it after the first record where you guys were questioning where you were individually as musicians and what you wanted out of this experience?
That was, more myself.
That's probably how the band started.
Yeah.
Was a moment like that, and then I guess maybe you.
Yeah, I had, right before this record, I definitely had a lot of questions about what I was doing. But it was time. It's just the timing of it all worked out in that way that I had this to come back to kind of remind me.
It's dangerous. Give me the idea. You know that thing when you're in a bad relationship, I don't mean to you guys, but when you're in a bad relationship and you know it long before you make a choice, it's the same thing in life, I think, where you have questions gnawing at you, where you start to wonder what it is I'm doing and how I'm doing it. Was it gnawing at you for a while?
I was burnt. Yeah, I was burnt out. I was just burnt out and took some time off. I've never taken more than, a few weeks off of anything, I don't think. And then I wound up taking a month, which turned into 2, it turned into 4, 5, 6, 7 months. I didn't do any music.
Did you road trip?
It started out as a road trip going from L.A. to New York. And I wound up just there for about 7 months. And yeah, it was really just kind of examining and discovering again, not to sound too cheesy, but just why you do what you do, And I had forgotten a lot of that. I just was just trying to keep up with myself and trying to do the right thing and do what you're supposed to do. That was the whole point in doing music, was that you do what you want to do, not what you're supposed to do, I guess.
And you also forget to, I think sometimes when you run at that speed, you forget that you actually like making things, you like to build things.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's what it's all just about, making something, yeah.
And where were you at, James, at the time?
I think I was, I'm a bit of a family man, so I was focused on that. I also had another Shins record I wanted to do, a bunch of songs I wanted to record, and so on. And I think that I had gained a lot of confidence because of working with Brian and touring as Broken Bells for that year. And I think there were just changes I wanted to make with the Shins, and so I did that.
Confidence as in just being able to...
that I could work with other people, and so some of these relationships that were a bit maybe unhealthy in certain ways, or they had... that there were aspects that had been gnawing at me, like you're talking about, that I needed to change the dynamic and stuff, and so I did that.
What's it like when I suppose this is a classic artist situation, but externally things are blowing up for both of you. People are really paying attention. Even for a lot of people, it goes back to the Grey record, Grey album, and then you hear about, the guerrilla stuff, and then your story builds, then Shins blows up, and then you have that song. I think New Slang is going to go down in history as one of the songs of its era, but internally you're feeling like this isn't as smooth as it ought to be at this stage.
Yeah, I suppose so. I don't know how aware I was, of what was going on externally, but there's still, nevertheless, you're still you've got friendships, and those can be sort of jostled when that sort of success happens.
Right.
And, and I think my focus has changed and my values kind of changed. Like I said, I got married and I've got kids, and, certain things get a little more serious in that.
It's prime solo record
setting.
time, though. This is when a man puts out a solo album,
yeah.
right? In this era. I suppose you had all those songs.
Yeah, well, that's sort of what the Shins does for me. That's where I can kind of just sort of, that's the vehicle for my songs or whatever. But then there's Broken Bells, where it's like I get to have this really great collaborative relationship with Brian.
Right. Was I reading? You grew up in Atlanta?
Somewhat.
And around?
Yeah.
I was reading that you had said that in your school no one knew who Kurt Cobain was till the day he died, and because at that time music was so...
It's pretty segregated,
Yeah.
I guess. yeah, I mean, I remember seeing. I mean, it was mostly black middle school. Well, it would have been high school or middle school. What it would have been 93. He died.
Yeah, 94. Yeah.
93. Yeah. So that would have been high school. Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, just everybody listened to hip hop, and that was it. And then I remember getting to college a couple years later and hearing Nevermind and going, oh, I've heard half this album just
in the car
walking
or something.
around, just walking around being a person. You do hear these songs, you do know them,
Right.
but I never went out of my way to listen to them. But I didn't realize all these songs were from the same band and on the same record. I was like, that's kind of must have been a big record, you know.
Yeah.
But it was just different.
Imagine how this Broken Bells record would play in those high schools, you know, when you were a kid.
I don't think my high school would have paid attention.
Would have embraced it.
I don't think they would have paid too much attention to it. No, I don't think so.
I mean, and I suppose it shouldn't have been surprising to people, but when word got out that the two of you were going to work together on something for the first one, we played a song on our show the first time, and we were like, right. We had no idea what it was going to sound like, and it didn't sound like what we thought it was going to sound like, whatever that ended up being.
Yeah.
And I wondered if this project, did you guys have any concept of what it could turn into when you first, because would you meet on tour? Is that true? You just went on tour and said,
10 years ago, yeah. On
let's
tour.
make a record? Is that kind of how it...
When we first met, we was just sort of, that first encounter, we became acquaintances, I guess. And then we would run into each other because Gnarls took off. And so he would be touring the festival circuit, and the Shins would also be doing that. And so we'd all hang out whenever we could. But, it was like sort of separate lives.
And then it just kind of came together timing-wise when, after the second Gnarls record, taking a break.
And I wanted to take a break after Wincing.
Yeah.
So the collaboration is a great reality, but when you're two guys who have very strong ideas, what's the process by which you figure out if you are compatible?
It's working.
Yeah, you just try it.
Yeah.
It might not have been, but it just was from the beginning. I really love what James does, and so the idea of doing something different than what he had already done was kind of. I didn't want him to necessarily go and do anything different. I just knew it would be. If we did something, it would sound a little different. But I already liked what he did, so I already like what he does.
Did you guys have to learn a language to challenge each other? Some bands slip into passive-aggressive over years. Some bands are more direct and is aggro. How did you
Well, I
figure
mean,
that?
Brian could never be passive-aggressive, I don't think. He's just actively aggressive. Which is kind of a good thing. You know where you stand with somebody like that. And I think it also makes you to have the confidence to say what you need to say.
Right. So just sitting back listening to something going, I got to tell this guy that
That's
was
a
the
pain in
wrong
the
pass.
ass. Yeah, because then I have to keep doing it. I mean, it's something I've paced around phones many times. Like, I got to pick up the phone and tell this person that this doesn't work, or that doesn't work. If it's at the moment of impact, when it first happens, it's a lot easier. But the longer you let something sit, then the more difficult it is. Because you don't want people to ever think that they're hanging out with you and that you didn't like it the whole time. Even that whole time we hung out, we went and we had drinks and this and that, and that whole time you weren't liking it, you didn't tell me. It's just I dread that. So I try to just, at the moment if it's happening, I try to get there if I can. And some people handle it better than others. And from day one with James, it was A-okay. I mean, he was just so willing to try anything new, anything different if I didn't like something. And it goes both ways, though. I go out there and try stuff. And now our communication is, like on this record, I could come in the room, and if I don't hear a certain thing, if I don't hear a certain word, I look over at James, and I can tell without us even talking whether he liked what I just did or not. Right. And so I'll just be like, oh, that I was just messing around. We're not going to keep that. We'll try something else. Like, I won't even have to. Like, we know when the other person likes something, so there's not even a point. So I might have thought that was so good. Something in there surely was good, but you don't force it. You can tell. And so I think that when something is good, you feel that much better because you feel pretty confident about it. Like you're with somebody who would tell you, and so you're not constantly questioning. I mean, being an artist, so much of it is just doubting yourself and questioning yourself.
Yeah.
And when you're with somebody that is takes music really seriously, and they like something you did, you just feel empowered. You feel better. And if they don't like it, then good. Now you don't have to worry. You go on and do something else.
And sometimes things change. I mean, sometimes if you you can be unsure about it too, and be like, maybe I just don't get it. We'll leave it in, you know. And there's always the day that you mix things down and stuff that you can finally decide things.
Yeah, I mean, we're always looking for.
Don't let your ego get attached to little things. I think
You're
that'd be
usually looking for
hard to do
the
that.
mistakes. You know, the mistakes are the things that are going to be special. You know,
But those are the things we tend to remember too. We don't even, as an audience, we don't even know what trips a subconscious wire, and it could be something that's accidental.
yeah. And that's usually the
you have
thing
to be
that-
open for those good mistakes.
Did you, walking out, you're alluding to unhealthy relationships before, did that change the way you approach working with somebody like new?
It made me worried about it. It
Yeah.
made me apprehensive about working with Brian. I was I think both intimidated by just sort of how successful he had been and the quality of people he had worked with, and also just nervous that like it's just not going to work. Like if you get together and you try and collaborate with somebody, it doesn't work. So I was just scared of that, I guess.
What I loved about hearing the new song, aside from that little Bee Gees thing going in the background, which I like, is that there's, and I don't mean it's like immediate, where music is immediate, and we know that things are changing all the time, and kids like what they like for 8 minutes, and then they move on, then they like something else. But I've always found really interesting where guys where they grow up, what is the new adult rock? Like, so I'm 41 years old, and I grew up on Lollapalooza, and I grew up on Public Enemy, so... But adult rock for me is not what adult rock was for our moms when they were kids. And what are these guys who are 26 and 27 when they're now 40 or 36? What are they making? And I find a lot of artists don't know how to make that transition. It's a very scary time for them because they don't know if their audience is going to be there anymore.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you ever thought about that, or if you ever thought about that, where you go, what are we going to do in 15 years?
Well, I think that.
Will there be records?
Right.
Yeah.
And 15 years ago, they really didn't know
Yeah.
if there would be.
Yeah.
I don't think that James and I were necessarily part of any fad or any kind of type of music. I think that stuff comes and goes. A lot of trends come and go, and I don't think we were part of any of the trends, sound-wise, or what we were doing. Maybe 20, 30 years from now, you can look back and say that there was or something like that, but it would be pretty wide, I think. I think there was no real thing that we really depended on. So I think the age doesn't apply quite as much because we don't have to. We can make the sounds and stuff we do. We're not chasing whatever sounds like on the radio. I don't think the first record or this one or even Shin stuff or even stuff I do. I mean, if I have something on the radio, it's rare for it to be on pop radio. It just is. I mean, somebody once in a while, but. It's rare.
But when you have stuff on pop radio, it's stuff that no one can believe is on pop radio. So
right. It doesn't sound
record,
like that. It doesn't sound like any. But again, and it's not based on anything being I'm not saying it's better or anything like that. It's just it's not part of what we do. Like the reasons why we do what we do is because the reasons why we make music are very similar, and so. I think that's not something that's going to change over the years and hasn't changed over the years. So we still put a lot into it. We still try really hard, but we've never really tried in the first place to be part of something that's the trend or what the thing you're supposed to do to be on the radio. That's never really been the thing anyway. So the sound of what we do doesn't seem to change. It hasn't to me. When I hear James sing and his voice, I believe him just as much, and his voice is even better almost. So I don't think that really winds up mattering as much, but I think that we're really just lucky that we can do that. That now is a time when you can still make stuff and it doesn't have to be trendy to still do okay.
Yeah, you don't actually even have to be on the radio for it to matter.
You can still sort of be successful, yeah.
Right. And has it changed for you? I mean, you were talking about how family has changed a bit of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Has it changed the essence of why you do what you do?
No, I don't. It's so hard to talk about that. I think because it's hard for me to be really conscious of what it is, like what the motivation is. I mean, there's something rewarding about it. I can't seem to escape it. The thing of sitting down with the guitar and writing songs, or how stoked I was when Brian and I were going to go back into the studio. I was just really, really excited about it, and that there's the strange sort of burst of excitement you get when you create something new, And I think that's the main thing. That's probably the beginning. That's the source of all this.
So this particular record, did someone make the first phone call to say, now's the time?
No, I mean, we never really were that out of contact anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
if the timeline of this is not as long as it seems, we toured. I mean, we started in 2008 on the first record, right? 2008, finished it in 2009.
Yeah.
Came out in 2010, and that's how long stuff just takes.
Oh yeah.
And
I
then
mean, we had this
toured-
record done a while ago.
Yeah, we toured in all of 2010, and 2011 was our last show. 2011, you went and did Shins, and but then 2012 we started working on this record. So it was only really like a year where we didn't work together,
Right.
and I went to at least 3 or 4 Shins shows, so I still saw him a few times that year, and then went right back to it. We started working on this in 2012, and then 2013 we finished it, and it came out in 2014. So there's never really was a time when we didn't talk or were doing such different things that it had to be such a deliberate thing to get back in the studio or anything like that.
I suppose if the alchemy is as blessed as it appears to be, you don't want to let it wait too long.
It's just such a fun
Yeah,
thing. I mean,
it's-
the touring is
fun,
going to
yeah.
be good, but just going to the studio is pretty easy. We should do it more. It's easy. It's that easy.
Where did you guys find the time?
I know.
Yeah, that's the issue.
Is there another Gnarls record coming out?
I don't know. I mean, Seal and I talk, and we always just assume we were going to make another record. It just hasn't happened yet.
And Shins?
Yeah, probably. I'm just doing this, right now and
Yeah.
having fun. So
Well, thanks for your time, guys. I really appreciate it. And good luck with the record. And
Thank you.
I'm sure it'll be wonderful.
Cool. Thank you.
Awesome.